Keeping score is like keeping the temperature of the relationship. When it's out of balance, if I'm getting a lot more than I think I'm giving, the tendency is to think, oh, he's doing this simply because he loves me. He may. But if you let that go on too long, and I've seen this happen with couples, one day he says, this isn't working out, and you're shocked. One day he says, I don't want to do this anymore. And where'd this come from? In fairness to you, he should have addressed this earlier. He should have brought it up, but he hasn't. He's let it stew and stew. And so when I tell women, please don't leave your relationship up to a man, this is what I'm talking about. Men don't always know what to do with that. And today we're going to talk about 3 things that drive men away in a relationship. Now, some of these are going to be obvious, some maybe not. And I should add this with it, that it's not things that someone necessarily wakes up and says, what can I do today to drive men away? Those would be things where the relationship is so bad and so fractured that there's other problems going on beside this. So probably a better way to say this are things that women accidentally do to drive men away. And certainly responsibility is not simply on women. It's that we want to focus on things that you can control. We can't control if a man has poor character. We can't control if he's irresponsible. Those things get into more about who you choose and observing those things. These are things that have to do with you that you may or may not do, but at least you're going to be aware of them. So the first thing that accidentally drives or pushes a man away is being negative or harsh. Now, the intention usually when I sit with couples or if I talk with individual women, rarely do I ever hear a woman that says, I'm harsh and that's who I am. I have heard that occasionally. I don't mean to be so negative. I'm just telling the truth. I love that one. So people don't wake up and say, what can I do with this? This has more to do, I think, with how women express themselves versus how men hear things. So negative is obviously about saying stuff that's defeatist, in a negative light. And a lot of times that feels good when women share this. So when they're talking and sharing, what I hear a lot of them say is, I'm just sharing what's in my heart. Why can't he just listen to me? Well, a man can listen to you. The problem with negative and the problem when you share that, and it's more about excess than anything else. It doesn't mean like never do this. But a man takes his cue how well he's doing in a relationship. One of the main ways is by your happiness. So if he feels like you're rarely happy, in his mind, he's a crummy boyfriend, or you're not happy with him, or he's not enough. Going even deeper over time, what he feels like is I've failed. Or some men have said, I can't win with her. And win doesn't mean he's trying to win a contest. It's that I can't succeed with her. Nothing I do seems to please her. When I've seen this with couples, what happens is the woman will say things that are nice at times. I do appreciate this. I do appreciate that you do that. There are things that you do that I really like. Thank you so much for those things. But then she's more negative than she is positive. Someone has mentioned a ratio, and I forgot exactly what it was, that it takes so many compliments to cancel out one insult. I don't know if that's true. I don't know if they've actually done data on that. But the methodology behind it is that when you get a negative thing, think about like a cut. When you give a cut to someone, it takes a while for that to heal up. And no matter how many nice things you do, how much chocolate you eat, how much massage you get, whatever, that cut is still going to take a certain amount of time to heal up. Now, what I don't want you to do is go the other extreme of saying, I can never say anything negative. I can never have a bad day. That's not what we're saying. It's sharing with your pains and sharing your complaints. Some of that is for your girlfriends. Not all, but some of that's for him. Because what a man's going to want to hear is when you have that, he's going to go to, how do I fix it? I shared this with a client. For any of you that's watched the John Wick movies, most every guy has. And there's a mechanic in there. And John Wick brings his car, or the guy comes to John Wick's car, and John Wick's car is just practically totaled. He got in one of his famous fight scenes, and the car got not just wrecked, but just the windshield's cracked. And the guy's walking around, and John Wick says, can you fix it? And the guy goes through and says, your transmission's falling out. There's a big crack in your hood, and also your windshield is messed up. And then he pauses. He says, I can fix it. Every guy gets that because every guy takes pride in their ability, no matter what the problem, we can fix it. When there's consistent negativity and complaining, what that tells him is you're not enough. May not be your intention. If you don't let him help you fix it, then sharing with him feels like you're holding him hostage. Because that's what he and that's what we men do when there's a problem is if I can fix it, it's bearable. What's awful for us is when there's a problem that we can't fix because that makes us feel powerless. And powerless is our greatest fear. Powerless is awful. We can handle adversity. We can handle pain. We can handle a lot of stuff. But the feeling powerless thing is something not only we're not used to feeling, but we'll do anything to avoid it, even do addictive stuff, even do immoral stuff. I'm not saying that's good, but feeling powerless is like kryptonite to a man. So consistent complaining, and again, when you say sharing, if we're not careful, gets into being transparent. So we don't want to be transparent with a man, because if you're transparent, that's treating him like a father. That's number two. The second way that accidentally drives men away. And this is similar, but it is testing him. And testing him is where you will say something or do something to get a reaction from him, to see how he responds. Ultimately, it's a way of getting reassurance. So as you're dating in the relationship or if you're married, you understand what his buttons are. You understand the things that irritate him. You understand, and it's reassuring to see him on a bad day or when you're having doubts that he comes and reminds you of how much he loves you. What I've seen this often is where a woman will say something, she's mad. And she says something she knows she shouldn't say. She says something derogatory. She says something really disrespectful. Why don't you man up and make more money? Or why don't you stop being so weak? Or whatever it would be, something. Or she says, I don't want to speak to you again. That's probably the most common one. I'm so mad, just don't speak to me again. So she says, don't speak to me again. Then by the time she comes to see me in our session and he hasn't spoken to her in 5 days, she says, why hasn't he spoken to me? And we kind of go through it. And I remind her, I said, you did tell him not to speak to you. She says, yeah, but I was just mad. Well, just being mad doesn't mean it doesn't hurt any less or doesn't sting any less because he's a man. Just being mad is a story we tell ourselves to justify what we did. I was just angry. I was just sad. It's just an excuse. It's true. You were angry and you were sad and you were scared. I mean, that's a true thing you're saying, but that's not to be used as a weapon. In fact, because you were angry, be more careful with what you say. Because you're scared, be cautious. I don't mean don't share, but a relationship is fragile by its nature. It doesn't mean it dies right away, but a relationship is something that needs nurture at times, and at times it doesn't. But it's not something that's just a given that we're entitled to, that no matter how we act, they're going to be there, even with men. So if we're testing a man, the more vulnerable thing to do is to ask for what you need. What is it when you're doing this? Are you feeling lonely? You feeling disconnected? We go through in the campfire effect program, one of the main components we do with the women in there is help them get in touch with their emotions. Listen to them, pay attention to them. Most all of them come in, they're like, I'm afraid if I do this, they're going to take over. They won't. And once we kind of guide you through how to do this. Because what your emotions do is it gives you an idea of what you need. That doesn't always tell you what you need. If I bang my knee up, my knee doesn't tell me go to such and such doctor, so hospital. No, it just says do something. That's what the pain's supposed to do. That's what our emotions are similar. It doesn't always tell us what to do, but it lets us know of a pressing need. And the nice thing is that whether we think there's a solution or not, the pain or the emotion says you must find one. See, it gets us out of our comfort zone. And so if you're feeling lonely, if you're feeling disconnected, that's your emotion actually saying to you, we're feeling disconnected. And that emotion or that pain actually helps push us toward being vulnerable. It's the same way with being hungry. If you're hungry and you just, whatever, I'm just not going to eat. Well, eventually you're going to get hungry enough where you do eat because it's a real need that you have. And if someone starts equating the idea that, well, I don't need to feel this, or I don't want to feel weak, or I say, well, that's like saying I shouldn't feel hungry. Or, if something scary happens to me, it's supposed to feel scary. That's normal. That's healthy. We don't want to make it where I have no fears. No fears is the pathway to being reckless. People that invest that don't have any fears lose their money really quickly. Every emotion has a purpose, and we don't use them to be controlled by them, but just to be aware of them. And so if we're testing, usually that's a way of cheating in the sense of trying to take a shortcut. I want reassurance, but I don't want to have to be vulnerable enough to ask for what I need or what I like. It doesn't mean you're entitled to it. It can just be a request. But pay attention with that much, because the testing part, men understand what women are doing. When they're testing, it's not that we don't get it. We just don't always want to acknowledge it. Because if we acknowledge it, the fear is that we're going to have to talk about it. I don't want to talk about it. I just want to fix this. So number 2, accidentally pushes the man away. If you test him enough times, he'll say, this isn't worth it. And no matter how much he loves you, how pretty you are, how kind you are, repeated testing rots away at any relationship. Number 3, this is going to be a little different. The way that women accidentally push men away, and men do this one too, is not keeping score. Not keeping score, you say? Yes, not keeping score. Perhaps you've been told keeping score is a bad thing. Keeping score in relationships is punitive. Keeping score in relationships is childlike. Not the way I'm talking about. People typically think keeping score involves, I'm going to remember the bad things you've done and hold on to those and hold that against you. And when you do something that's also bad, I'm going to remind you, I'm going to use it as a weapon, really to protect myself. I'm going to hold on to this stuff. So at the right moment, when you do the last thing, the straw that brought the camel's back, when you do that, I'm going to remind you all these other things over here. If that's what you mean by keeping score, then it's no good. What I mean by keeping score is remembering the things that he does that you really like and making sure that you give him credit for those to offset the things you don't like. What men find, not always, but often, well, it's probably better if I tell you this story. So I had a friend years ago, and I was talking with him and his wife, and he knew at the time I was a therapist. And he says, Bob, can you tell her this? And normally I don't want to do that because someone wins or someone loses, or they don't really want a serious answer. They just want something quick. So I'm like, what? And he explained, about how he tries really hard. He works really hard to impress her, and he did it fast, so it wasn't too serious. And she was playing along, and I don't know if she said, "Tell me, Bob," or she said it in a playful enough way that I thought, okay. And I said, "So what do you do?" I said, when he does something you really like. And she said, "Well," she says, "Look," she goes, "I'm just a quiet person." She goes, I'm not real emotive. I don't like to brag and say a lot of stuff. It feels weird, feels uncomfortable, feels awkward. She said, I just almost feel like I'm talking to a child. If I tell him how much I appreciate this, appreciate that." She goes, "I do at times." She goes, "And I do appreciate it." And I said, "Oh," and then she says, and then she pointed to her chest and she patted her heart. She says, I just tend to keep stuff inside." I said, "Okay." So I said, you're appreciative of him. I said, "And you do like it." I said, "And you tell him at times, so he has an idea as far as when he's doing a good job or not." And she says, "Yes, yes." And I said, "So tell me," I said, "when you're upset with him," I said, and I patted my chest, I said, "Do you keep it inside?" And she started to smile, and then she noticed, she says, "No." I said, "Well, what do you do when you're upset?" She says, "Well, I tell him." "Oh, how do you tell him?" She says, "Well, normally I just tell him." I said, she says, "If it's something really I don't like, that was really, he should have known better." She goes, "I might raise my voice." She goes, "I don't curse at him." She goes, "But I said, "Okay, so when he does something you like, you keep it inside. When he does something you don't like, most of the time," I said, "you tell him." And she saw it. Now, that doesn't mean someone's going to change just because I pointed out. It doesn't mean everything's going to be remedied. But in that moment, you'll hear she wasn't keeping score. She was just doing what felt comfortable for her. And I can tell you they struggled as a couple, not just because of that, but something like that is indicative. Because the things that concern us are the things that accumulate over time. As much as a bad choice or a bad instance can cause a lot of damage, what I found more likely is with couples, it's the things that don't get resolved, that have been built up. Resentment, to me, is what I fear the most as a relationship coach. If you're letting resentment build up, or he's letting resentment build up, it leads to all kinds of nasty things. So keeping score is making sure that when you're doing this, is that you acknowledge, but also that if he does stuff that you like, that you make sure that he's not the main one. So he's not the main one doing all the giving. So in a masculine feminine relationship, generally he gives more than you receive and you receive. But with that receiving, the prize he's looking for is the emotional response. It is the fact that he made you happy. The fact that you put as much intensity when he does something well as you do when he does stuff that you don't like. If you find that he's giving and taking into account what you want, you don't have to reward him. I would just highly recommend it. And put another way is if you see that he's giving and sacrificing and offering with things that you like, your reward to him gives him the signal, oh, this works. It's not enough to tell a man. If you just simply tell him, he's going to forget. It's not a checkbox. It would be the same thing of, you telling him, I like flowers. Okay, he'll remember that for about a day, maybe two, some men longer. And then when he does bring you flowers and you barely notice them, you are training him that you don't like flowers. Doesn't matter what you said. Your lack of reaction speaks more to him than your words. So for him, keeping score, what I do this with couples is I say, make sure that you're not receiving most of the time. And what I mean by receiving is getting what you want most of the time, more so than him. When we keep score, we choose to keep score, what we're keeping score is how much are we giving the other person what they like. It can't be where you do all the giving. That's just as bad, because if you're doing all the giving or most of it, you're going to get resentful, and let's bring that up. Let's ask what's wrong. There's a reason he's not giving stuff. He's upset about something. He's overwhelmed at work. There's some reason. Let's talk about that. But what we don't want to do, I found, is the idea that love should be selfless and we should just give, give, give. That sounds good on paper, kind of. But the problem with that is it's not realistic in that we like getting. It's no good just to give. Just giving and giving leads you bankrupt. And it's not that we give something that if I give this, you have to turn around right away and give that. Keeping score is like keeping the temperature of the relationship. When it's out of balance, if I'm getting a lot more than I think I'm giving, the tendency is to think, oh, he's doing this simply because he loves me. He may. But if you let that go on too long, and I've seen this happen with couples, one day he says, this isn't working out, and you're shocked. One day he says, I don't want to do this anymore. And where'd this come from? In fairness to you, he should have addressed this earlier. He should have brought it up, but he hasn't. He's let it stew and stew. And so when I tell women, please don't leave your relationship up to a man, this is what I'm talking about. Men don't always know what to do with that. If a woman acts like that's normal for him to do most of the giving, most of the sacrificing, and he doesn't get much back, men are sufferers. I'm not saying it's always good. Men can suffer a lot more than women think and do it quietly until they've had enough. And then affairs happen or they break up. So keeping score is one of the best things you can do, not only to keep the relationship alive, but to make him feel appreciated. And then that tends to feed off each other. So that the idea is neither one is going to consistently outgive the other. So these are three things that women accidentally do to push a relationship away. It's not all women. It's not all the time. But this is like a cheat sheet. It doesn't encompass everything, but those three things alone, if you find yourself struggling, this is one of the first three places that I would look if I was you. So if you enjoyed this, hit the like button. Be sure to subscribe. Leave a comment below because we like looking at them. It gives us feedback, tells us what you like, what you don't like. Be sure to visit us on relationshipheadquarters.com. I look forward to seeing you next time.